Hey, Shalom. First off, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Achak, I want to give double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of GMS who have taught us this word and teach us this word today. And I want to give a salutation unto the hopeful elect scattered across the four corners of this earth, striving for salvation. This is the brother Yatazak Bob with the GMS Nebraska camp. And in this lesson, I'm once again addressing the comment board, addressing this Yehuda Yetman again, 9353, and he left another comment. My previous video was touching on this first comment, about the rapture. And in this video, what I wanted to touch on is this comment where he says, "My brother, the Gog and Magog war is after the millennium reign, when the real Israelites are in their land. Christ will intervene in this war." And so, based off of the comments that this individual is leaving, there's a very the prophetic lens that this person is looking through is from what is taught from Christianity and the world's understanding of the scriptures and of biblical prophecy and what we read in the book of Revelation. And I want to get into Revelation chapter 20 and this Gog and Magog war and show how, it's impossible for this war to be after this millennium reign. What is the millennium reign? When is the Gog and Magog war going to happen? I want to get into that in this video and give the sense. If this, Lord willing, this lesson is edifying. I'm not intending to argue with this individual. Again, like I said in the last video, it seems like this person is genuinely asking questions or genuinely, ignorant to the truth, but in ways, they have a mix between, what they're hearing from the Hebrew Israelites and then what they have learned from the Christian church. And I just want to set the record straight, but Lord willing, this lesson is edifying. So first and foremost, touching on this millennium reign, we have to get into Revelation chapter 20, because that is where this idea of this 1,000-year reign and then war happening and, Satan coming back, after 1,000 years, they get that from Revelation chapter 20. And the reason why that misconception exists is because people read Revelation chapter 20 as if it is a continuous timeline of events. What has to be understood about Revelation chapter 20 is that when it talks about the 1,000 years in this chapter, there's two separate segments that we have to look at. We have to look at verses 1 through 3, and then going into verse 7. Verses 1 through 3 into verse 7 is talking about 1,000 years. Verses 4 through 6 is a totally separate 1,000 years that has nothing to do, or that is separate from the 1,000 years that we read from verse 1 to 3 and then continuing in verse 7. And the reason why that is because the book of Revelation are visions that John the Revelator was receiving from the Most High. And with these visions, as John was, writing these visions down on what the Lord was showing him, we have to understand that how these were being given, it was like dreams. Just like you have dreams, and you may have a dream where something's happening in your dream and then it jumps to another part in the dream that's separate from the dream you were having, but then you may bounce back to your first part in the dream. It's not a continuous streamline of events. You'll have a dream where one thing is happening and then it's something completely separate, and then it'll go back to the beginning, Well, that's what was happening with John when he was receiving the visions. And so as we go into this chapter, hopefully, that is made clear. So let's go ahead and read it in verse 1. It says, "Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven with the key to the bottomless pit and a heavy chain in his hand." Now, this key to the bottomless pit, what this is talking about, what's this bottomless pit speaking about? This is speaking about Europe. And why is Europe being called the bottomless pit? Well, when you think of a bottomless pit, it's a pit that has no bottom. You keep digging into the pit, and whatever you're looking for, you're not getting it. And when with Europe is lacking in mineral resources in its topsoil. And so it has difficulties with agriculture, which is why certain specific things have to be done for the Europeans to succeed agriculturally. They either have to import different types of foods from other countries, or they have to get farm in a special type of way, or get different fertilizers so that they can farm successfully. But their soil is naturally lacking in topsoil, because Europe has for a very, very long time gone through something called soil leaching, which, let's get into that, what soil leaching is. It says soil leaching is the process where water percolates through soil, dissolving and washing away water-soluble nutrients, minerals, and contaminants. While it helps flush out toxic salts, it is the leading cause of nutrient depletion and groundwater pollution. So why has Europe gone through this? Because of a heavy amount of rain that has hit Europe over hundreds of years. So when we scroll down, it says causes are heavy rainfall, over irrigation, and sandy soils, or poor water retention, and the depletion of protective vegetation. There was something else here that I wanted to read, which goes into it. Let me see here. Okay, I lost it, but that breaks it down though. What happens is that the over, the mass amount of rain that hits Europe causes it basically drowns the soil in a way, and it brings all the minerals that was in the topsoil very, very deep down into the ground, to where the topsoil doesn't have the minerals to properly farm and grow crops. And so that's why it calls Europe the bottomless pit in that verse. And this is very important to establish, because we're about to go into history of Europe, which is going to establish this first 1,000 year period. So that's why I'm touching on this and really establishing, why this bottomless pit is Europe. Not only has Europe gone through the soil leaching, but we have to understand that majority of Europe at one point in time was forest land. And forest lands, forest lands are different than grasslands. North America, for example, was mostly grasslands at a point, which naturally has very, very rich topsoil, because the grass dies and it feeds the ground and then it regrows. And when that grass is dying and going through that process of regrowing, it's constantly giving that topsoil the nutrients and minerals it needs to grow things. But with forest land, what's giving the soil its nutrients are the trees, because it's mostly forest and woods and trees. So the roots from the trees is feeding the topsoil. But what happened in Europe is that when cities and civilizations were beginning to get built, people were cutting down all these trees and uprooting them. And so the roots were being taken out of the soil, which was the main point of making the soil rich. So when them trees was removed, now the soil isn't getting its source of nutrient, and that was another cause, on top of the rainfall causing the soil leaching. That was another cause which was making the topsoil, lack richness and nutrients, and that's another reason why it's, that bottomless pit, and Lord willing, I know this is gonna be, a slow, for lack of better words, drawn out lesson. Lord willing, this, I'm not losing anybody. But let's get back into Revelation chapter 20. It says, "Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven with the key to the bottomless pit and a heavy chain in his hand." And we're about to see who this chain is for and what it is. So let's go to verse 2. And I just realized I got both my Bibles in the NLT. I'm not sure why. This is supposed to be in the KJV and in the NLT on the. I'm supposed to have the NLT on the right and the KJV on the left. All right, so let's read this again. "And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years." Now, this dragon, the old serpent, the devil, Satan, these are all descriptions which are describing Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. This is who the great chain was placed upon. And what that chain represents is that Esau's rulership and his power was going to be restricted and brought, not just restricted, but he was going to be brought down out of power for a period of time. The power that he was going to be stripped of, that he held in Europe, was, the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire was going to fall. And it says what? That chain was going to be bound. He was going to be bound in that chain for 1,000 years. Now the Roman Empire fell around the year 476 AD. So let's keep that in mind. Again, it says that the angel laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan. Again, those are all describing Esau. The devil being deceiver, which is what Esau is, a deceiver. He deceived the nations then, and he's doing the same thing today. And that's why it says in verse 3, "and cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal upon him." So there was basically, the Most High basically had it to where Esau, would not be able to hold a position of power. He would be in a low position for a period of time. And this is known as the Dark Ages. And Esau, when you look up the Dark Ages, Esau describes it as a period of time where there was no advancement in the earth, where there was no, nothing, historically relevant or significant really going on in the planet. But that's not true. You had a lot of things can happen in 1,000 years. The Dark Ages was stemming from basically the fall of the Roman Empire all the way up into the Renaissance, which is what that 1,000 years is that we're reading about in these first 3 verses. But the reason why Esau likes to act like nothing was happening during that time is because there was nothing happening from Edomites during that time. But you had Jake that was ruling during that time. You had a lot of rich history of things that was happening, whether it was the Moors and the Crusades and, many different things. And so, let's read verse 3 again. It says, "And cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled." Right. And Esau was doing deceiving of the nations. We can read in First Maccabees chapter 3 verse 48, as an example of that deceiving that was being done. Because what was Esau doing? First Maccabees chapter 3 verse 48 says, "And laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images." This was happening during the time of the Maccabees. This was around the time of the Greek Empire. And it just shows, this is way before, and we're going to get into this when we get to the Renaissance. But even way before the Renaissance, Esau was always, trying to put himself into, our history books, and paint the likeness of his image, act like he, steal people's history, lie about things, you know, lie about his accolades, lie about others' accolades, act like, he had more going on than others. He deceived the nations. He makes himself to be something more than he actually is. And just this whole thing with the dark ages and what was actually going on, that's a level of deceit in and of itself that you have to, research so deeply, because let Esau tell it there was nothing going on during the dark ages. But let's go back. It says, and after, so let's read it again. So it says, till the thousand, or let's start right here. It says, let's start back at the top of verse 3. It says, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loosed a little season. So Esau had his time to rule around the Roman Empire. He had the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, and then his empire fell. It officially fell in 478 during Constantine's rule. That's when the Western Roman Empire officially fell, and he would be brought down low. Now it says that after those 1,000 years would be fulfilled, he will be loosed a little season. And we are living in that little season that Esau will be loosed, and his power will be back upon the earth in this time right now. So for the moment, we're going to go past verses 4 through 6, and we're going to touch on that. But I want to go straight to verse 7 to show that this is a continuation of what we read in verses 1 through 3. Because when you read in verse 7, it says, and when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. So that low state that will be placed upon Esau, to where he would not hold any position of power, to where he would be lowly in the earth, the Lord was going to allow him to get back power and influence in the earth. And this happened with the Renaissance. Let's look up the years when the Renaissance happened. When was the beginning of the Renaissance? It says the Renaissance began in 14th century Italy and marked a cultural, artistic, and intellectual rebirth. And what it really was, it was a rebirth of Esau's culture, of Esau's dominance. This is when Greek and Roman influence started to be, back prevalent. And a major thing that happened during the Renaissance was that you had iconoclasm, because, again, the Lord, stopped Esau from deceiving the nations for that 1,000 years that he was brought low. But once that 1,000 years was over, his deceiving nature was, he was able to run wild with it again. And what happened was that you had the iconoclasm. What was a major thing that happened within the Renaissance? Jesus Christ was born. Caesar Borgia was painted, and his image was tied to the Lord in the scriptures. And that's where you get Jesus Christ, where so many people worship to this very day. You have, the likeness of Edomites being, depicted as the Most High, as the angels, as, so many figures in the scriptures, as the Most High's people in general, white faces, so-called white faces. That's what happened during the Renaissance. And that shows you that what Esau was able to be loosed, and his deceiving nature was brought back to the forefront. So it says here that the Renaissance began in the 14th century. It says it is broadly acknowledged to have taken root around the 1350, and that was like the early Renaissance, and it says that the high Renaissance was the late 15th to early 16th century. So this is around 1350 to the 1400s, which is almost exactly 1,000 years after the Roman Empire fell. That's that 1,000 years that we're reading about that, begins, Revelation chapter 20. So let's go back to Revelation chapter 20. It says, so before we read more within this period of 1,000 years. Remember, keep in mind, this is a one segment of 1,000 years. This is from the Roman Empire's fall, Esau being brought low, and then 1,000 years later, during the Renaissance, Esau would get back prevalence in the earth. He would cement, power, and now you have this American civilization which has come out of it. You have, this religion that has come out of it. Christianity, Catholicism, which wasn't born in the Renaissance, but now Catholicism has heavily been pushed upon the earth, where all these falsehoods and these things such as, the rapture and, all these different false beliefs about prophecy have, mainly been pushed. So let's go to verse 4. Now, again, this 1,000 year period, this is where confusion comes in, because they think that this is the same 1,000 year period that we was reading at the beginning. And this 1,000 years is after Esau's fall, in this time, after America is destroyed, after after the Israelites take the kingdom, after we're ruling the world, after Yahushua comes back, brings salvation unto us, sets us in our land. This is when this 1,000 years is taking place. And let's read it in verse 4. And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. So who is it talking about that these thrones are given to? This is given unto the Israelites, predominantly the elect of the nation of Israel, first and foremost. Because when you read in 1 Corinthians, let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 1, which says, dare any of you having a matter against another go to the law before the unjust and not before the saints? Do ye not know that the saints shall judge the world? And if the world should be judged by you, are ye unworthy to judge the smallest matters? So who are the saints? The saints are talking about the Israelites. And it says that the saints are going to judge the world. That's showing that those thrones are going to belong to the Israelites. Let's see, I had another precept I wanted to grab as well. Let's go to Daniel chapter 7 and verse 22, which says, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. So this, it's to the saints that those thrones belong in Revelation chapter 20, verse 4. And these are not spiritual Israelites. These are not, this is not the Christian church, which have become, through that replacement theology, which are now Israelites. No, these, like it says in Psalms 50 and 5, gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. Those are who the saints are. Those who made a covenant with the Most High Yahweh. And who made a covenant with the Most High? It was the nation of Israel. So let's go back to Revelation chapter 20, verse 4. And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Yahushua and for the word of the Most High, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither have received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with Hamashiach 1,000 years. Now, this time is coming very soon, where, this hour of temptation, where we're about to be faced with the MOTB, which is the RFID chip, and some of us are going to face death for not taking it, and those who hold strong for this truth, whether they are put to death or, whether they are, whether they stay alive in these bodies all the way until, the time of salvation, they are of that number of the elect. Salaki, I had to take a phone call, so the video got interrupted. But reading on, as I was saying, so when it says they lived and reigned with the Mashiach 1,000 years, this 1,000 year reign is not a time, it's not like we're gonna rule 1,000 years and then you're reading down and then boom, Satan's loosed out of his prison. He comes out of the abyss, and then the Gog and Magog war happens. No, remember, these are two separate 1,000 year periods that we're talking about. We're gonna get back to that time where Satan's loosed out of his prison and getting to what that Gog and Magog is talking about. But right here, this 1,000 years is specifying it because this first 1,000 years of our reign is very pivotal. This is going to be the first 1,000 years of our righteous reign upon the earth after, this mess that Esau has done. And this is going to be us getting the earth back in order, us whipping these nations, into shape. Them going through a hardcore slavery, especially Esau, and it's just, it is specifying those 1,000 years, and our rule is going to be forever, mind you. This is an eternal rule. But again, it's specifying those 1,000 years because its part that is going to play in reordering the earth. So let's read on. It says, but the rest of the dead live not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection, and the rest of the dead living not again. That's talking about the heathen. It says that the rest of the dead live not again till the first 1,000 years are finished. Now, when we come into our kingdom, we going to be living. That's going to be the first time we have truly lived, because this is not life, us in this captivity, in this current world that we're in. As the scriptures say, this is not where this present life is not where much glory doth abide. But as soon as we come into our kingdom, we're going to take hold unto glory. That's going to be us truly living. But the heathen are going to go straight into captivity. And for the first 1,000 years, the heathen are going to be placed in their lands and get their dominions, and they're going to be established in a way, but we're going to be over them, and well, like let's get the scriptures on what it says in Psalms chapter 149 and verse 5. It says, let the saints be joyful in glory, let them sing aloud upon their beds. Let the high praises of the Most High be in their mouth, and a two-edged sword in their hand, to execute vengeance upon the heathen and punishments upon the people. So the heathen going to be going through it. We're going to be punishing them. We're going to be beating them on atop the head. We're going to be cutting them down, and we're going to make sure that they are subject unto us. They're going to be subject unto us regardless, but we're going to make sure that they're in the right mind, that they're following the right way, that they're that they are serving Yahweh Bashim Hawashai, that they are following the law, statutes, and commandments, that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're going to be building up our kingdom. They're going to be, we going to be getting them in a right order. It says, well, to bind their kings with chains and their nobles with fetters of iron, to execute upon them the judgment written. This honor have all his saints, praise ye the Lord. And, we have to definitely prioritize the fact that, our kingdom is going to take rebuilding, because as we come into rulership, the earth is going to be in shambles. This is going to be post-nuclear war. This is going to be post-World War III. So there's going to be a lot of things that have to be cleaned up. As you read in Ezekiel 39, where it talks about the aftermath of the war, between Babylon the Great and Gog and Magog, and talks about how the dead bodies are going to have to be cleaned up. Rubble's going to have to be cleaned up. Our walls are going to be built. It's a process. And that's another reason why it's, talking about those 1,000 years. It's not going to take 1,000 years for our kingdom to be fully, built up and established. It's not like we're going to be waiting that long. But again, it's just a part of that process of the 1,000 years, So let's go back to Revelation chapter 20 and verse 5, because I want to touch on that part at the end where it said, this is the first resurrection. Now, what is the first resurrection? The first resurrection is talking about those Israelites which are going to be in the kingdom. And it says that they are the first resurrection. Now, what was this resurrection that they were the first of? This resurrection isn't a literal resurrection of, dead people coming back alive. This was the resurrection of us spiritually dead Israelites coming, receiving the breath of life, which is this truth. We were spiritually dead in a state of ignorance, not knowing who we are, not knowing our, the knowledge of these scriptures, not knowing our history. But then we received this truth and we were made alive spiritually. And that's what that first resurrection was. And it's going to be those who, held fast to that resurrection and that calling and was chosen that are going to be the first to rule in the kingdom amongst the nation of Israel. That's that first resurrection. And so in verse 6 it says, blessed and holy is he that had part in the first resurrection. On such the second death hath no power. What is the second death? Well, the first death was by water. The second was by fire. Let's get that. Let's get Revelation. It says in the same chapter, in Revelation chapter 20, verse 14, right here, where it says, and death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. It also says it here in Revelation 21:8, where it says, but the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. And that's talking about America being destroyed by fire by way of thermonuclear missiles. That's what that second death is, And so, again, those who are of that first resurrection, those who was called, brought into this truth, made alive, and held fast all the way until, receiving salvation and was chosen for salvation, they will not take part in that second death. And blessed and holy are they. Lord willing, we be of that number. So let's read on. It says, in verse 6, blessed and holy is he that had part in the first resurrection. On such the second death hath no power. But they shall be priests of the Most High and of Hamashiach, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. And once again, that 1,000 years, that's not a limit to how long we're going to rule. We're going to rule forever. But those 1,000 years, again, is just emphasizing those 1,000 years as a pivotal point in time of our rule. So let's grab a couple precepts real fast. We're going to grab Revelation chapter 14, verse 3, which says, and they sung as it were a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders. And no man can learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. And that's that first resurrection, us being redeemed from the earth and made the a part of the elect. It says, these are they which are not defiled with women, for they are virgins. And what do those women represent in this verse? It represents other doctrines. It represents other, walks and ways of life and beliefs. The Lord has revealed unto us the proper way of life, the proper, belief, the proper doctrine. And the elect are going to hold fast unto it unto the end. And it says, these are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits unto the Most High and to the Lamb. So there was the first fruits. And let's get what that word first fruits, which is Strong's G50 536, aparche, which is to offer firstlings or first fruits, to take away the first fruits of the productions of the earth, which was offered to the Most High, the first portion of the dough from which sacred loaves were to be prepared. Hence term used of persons consecrated to the Most High for all time. So it's basically the cream of the crop. It's the best of the bunch. The elect are the best of the Israelites. Like it says, persons superior in excellence to others of the same class. So those who are a part of that first resurrection, who don't take part of that second death, they are superior in excellence to the rest of the nation of Israel. And this is why we want to be of that elect. We don't want to be 2/3 that are reborn and into the kingdom. We want to make it on the first go around. Let's get Micah chapter 4, verse 8, which says, and thou, O tower of the flock, the stronghold of the daughter of Zion. So what's the tower of the flock? What's the stronghold of the daughter of Zion? That's the elect of the nation of Israel. That strongest point of our nation. It says, unto thee shall it come, even the first dominion. The kingdom shall come to the daughter of Jerusalem. So the first dominion, that first rulership in the kingdom, you know, that first establishment of, being joint heirs with Yahweh Shai, and reigning as kings and priests over this earth. So let's see here. So let's go back to Revelation chapter 20. And so again, we just read verse 4 through 6. This 1,000 years is separate, and it takes place after everything else we read in this chapter from verse 1 through 3, and then continuing in verse 7. Verse 4 and 6 happens after that. So let's go back to verse 7. We're going to go back. And it says what? And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. So this is Esau. We talked about Esau coming up during the Renaissance and establishing his rule over this earth. It says what? And shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth. And this is what Esau is doing right now today. He has deceived the nations of the earth. He has fed people these religions. He's fed people this lie of Jesus, of that he is the true children of Israel. He's fed, our nation the lies of being African American, Mexican, all these different things, lied about our heritage, lied about who we are. He's deceiving the world. He's trying to pull this ultimate deceit with this new world order, and trying to be God over the world. And it says, now this is the part, that the question was based on. It says Gog and Magog to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. So like I established in the previous, in the video that the question was asked, Gog is talking about Russia. Magog is the land, but Gog is what we focus on. Gog is talking about Russia. And it says that, they're going to be gathered with, Esau to battle. So America is going to be in war against Russia and with the other nations of the earth as well, because what's being painted here when it talks about, them being gathered together to battle is Armageddon. All the nations, all the armies of the earth gathering together to fight. This is a major battle that is going to happen in World War III. And what's going to happen, it says what? And they went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints about. So what's the camp of the saints? That's the land of Israel. And it's talking about God is going to compass the camp of the saints. And it says what? In the beloved city. And fire came down from the Most High out of heaven and devoured them. So who is in the camp of the saints right now? Who is inhabiting our land? Those Amalekites, which are Edomites. And it says that what? In this battle, when Gog is with this war that Russia is going to be a part of, they're going to shoot missiles. And not only is America going to be, wiped out and destroyed, but the land of Israel is going to be wiped out and destroyed as well, because it has to be cleansed of the Edomites that's in our land, all the wickedness that they're doing. Just like you have recently, they've thrown this huge, pride parade in our land, like they do, all the time. All type of, desecration has been brought to our land. Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai is not being upheld there. The law, statutes, and commandments are not being upheld. They're walking in wickedness in that land. They doing what they want to do. And so that place has to be cleansed, and it's going to be rebuilt, and we're going to, live in that land righteously and make sure it's sanctified. But first it has to be cleansed by fire. It says, and the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are. So that devil that deceived them is talking about Esau. It says in the beast, which is what? NATO and EU, and the false prophet, which is the Catholic Church. All these things are going to be vanquished. These ideas, they're going to be brought down. It says, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. And that's not eternity when it says forever and ever. When you get into that, it's talking about an age. When you get into forever, it says, it's like this is the wrong, because in here it's in Strong's G165. It says Aeon, which is forever, and unbroken age, perpetuity of time, eternity. But it also says what? A period of time, an age. And people read this and say, oh yeah, see, this is talking about how, you know, the devil and the beast and the false prophet, they're gonna burn in hell for eternity after this war. Well, this is talking about America is gonna be burning, and fire is gonna be coming from America for a very, very long time. That's what's talking about forever and ever, and eventually that fire is gonna go out, and this place is never gonna be inhabited. But Esau's rule and the concepts that he's pushed upon the earth and his wickedness is going to be put out. But even Esau is going to have an end, because he's going to serve a captivity in our kingdom for 1,000 years. And then we are going to do away with the Edomites. We're going to burn them up, as you read in Obadiah chapter 1. We're going to eliminate every single Edomite. So they're going to go into captivity right along with the rest of the heathen. But after 1,000 years, they're going to be destroyed out of the earth. They're going to have served their sentence, and there's going to be an end to them. And the heathen, they're going to be able to live in their lands. You know what I'm saying? They're going to be subjects, in our kingdom. So that's what this is talking about in Revelation chapter 20. That's the breakdown to that. And I want to make one more point, because like the comment said, where it said that once we are established, God, the war of Gog and Magog happens after we are established in our land, and Yahweh Shai is going to have to intervene. Well, the scriptures say, let's go to Ezekiel chapter 39, because it talks about how, Gog is going to be brought down as well. The Lord is going to use Gog, or Russia, as an agent of destruction against Esau. While I say against Esau, but the Russians are Edomites themselves. I say as an agent of destruction against America and against Israel. But Russia is going to be, brought down as well. They're going to get hit by missiles, and they're not going to get off scot-free. And it talks about that here in this chapter. But I want to get to a specific point in Ezekiel chapter 39, where it says, and they that dwell in the cities of Israel shall go forth, and shall set on fire and burn the weapons, both the shields and the bucklers, the bows and the arrows, and the handstaves and the spears. And they shall burn them with fire 7 years, so that they shall take no wood out of the field, neither cut down any out of the forest. For they shall burn the weapons with fire, and they that spoil those, and they shall spoil those that spoiled them, and rob those that robbed them, said the Lord Yahweh. So this is after Ezekiel 38. This is after, the beginning of Ezekiel 39. This is after this, the war of Armageddon, of World War III has taken place. And this is when we are established as the rulers of this earth. And it says when we are established, that all the weapons of the earth are going to be burnt up, because we are going to establish peace on this earth. Once we come into power, there will be no more war upon the planet, period. No more war. That's why it says in Isaiah chapter 2 and verse 4. And I'm just getting straight to the point. I can read verse 2 and 3 as well, where it talks about how the heathen are going to come unto us and learn of our ways and follow after us. But let's get to the point in verse 4. It says, and he shall judge among the nations. Who? The Most High is going to judge among the nations. Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. And, the nation of Israel by extension. It says, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. So there will be no more war. There's not going to be a 1,000-year reign. And then after 1,000 years, the heathen have been getting whipped into shape. They've been getting, put down by us, disciplined. They learning of our ways. They learning, they worshiping Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. 1,000 years have passed, and then out of nowhere, war is going to break out. That's not going to happen. We are going to establish peace on this earth. There's not going to be any weapons. We're going to be in new bodies. So how is anybody even going to fathom the idea to try to fight? There ain't no war with God, no Gog and Magog war after 1,000 years. There is no more war after 1,000 years. You know, so that's it. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. Once again, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachar Kudash. I want to give double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of GMS, and a salutation unto the elect.